So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I think most of you have been on one of our Pimento events before. If you haven't, where have you been? This is, I think, our 34th event of the year. And it's great to have you all still with us. What we're going to be talking about today is a broad review of this year, but in particular, we're going to be talking with Paul Phillips, who is in the chair with our own Business Development Director, Paddy Woods. For those that aren't familiar with Paul, Paul is the Managing Director of the AAR. I suspect many of you will be aware of who the AAR is, but for those that don't know the AAR, they're the original client agency dating service, long before Tinder was around. In fact, the AAR has been around for some 45 years, and it helps brands to design marketing ecosystems and build inspiring partnerships, which is sort of technical jargon for it helps agencies and clients find their match, and also helps to facilitate and create better relationships between agencies and their clients. It's also for brands, for agencies, a source of knowledge, business development and expertise, as well as training. Whilst the name started with the word advertising, it very much covers all marketing disciplines these days, with a particular focus on creative agencies, media agencies, PR, comms and events agencies, and increasingly, obviously, lots of other stuff. Paul has basically been both sides of the coin. He started out life in agency land, 16 years working for agencies before he joined the AAR before the turn of the century. I love saying that, back in 1998. Originally, his focus was on setting up their media consultancy, and that was just at the point where media was becoming much more independent of full service agencies. Paul now consults and works with clients across both their creative agency requirements, commercial relationships, and working practices within their agency networks. And as he sees it, he is someone who cuts very much the core very quickly. So he's one of those characters, as you'll discover very shortly, he says it as it is, and is refreshingly straightforward and easy to work with. With 24 years personal experience now at the AAR, he's keen to understand how the agency world operates, and has an intuitive grasp of the results that clients want to achieve. Clearly, he's someone in the know. He spends half his working week, if not more, talking to clients, and the remainder of the time talking to agencies. And he has a very good idea as to what's happening in the world of communications, marketing, and creative services. So he's very much got his finger on the pulse, and we very much welcome all of you today to ask as many questions as you possibly can. I'm going to hand over in a second, if I may, to Paddy, who will be our MC today. Just one final church notice. Our last event of the year will be next Wednesday at this time, the 35th or 34th event of the year. And in this session, we're going to be doing a bit of a retrospective. There's also a preview, all wrapped up in one. I'll be in the hot seat, and I'll have two guests with us. What we've done is we've chosen our two perhaps most popular guests of the year, both in terms of viewership on our catch-up channel, as well as the number of people attended at the time. We've got the irreverent Lee Warren with us. Lee, for many of you, I think you'll probably remember him. He's a professional business and keynote speaker, conference host, and author of the best-selling Busy Person's Guide to Great Presenting. And alongside him will be the affable, highly amusing, and quite wonderful, in my humble belief, David Weldon. David, you remember he did a really interesting event at the beginning of the year where we actually set him up to be the CMO of Brand Britain, and what would he do to rebuild our brand after what had been arguably a very turbulent 2020. David is, I think, still regarded as probably the most senior CMO of them all. He's former Drum Magazine's Marketing Award Lifetime Achievement Prize, which he got alongside the likes of Keith Weed and Richard Branson. He's an all-round good bloke and highly entertaining. So I think the two of them next weekend, hopefully, will be a fairly relaxed, fireside chat with myself, and we'll cover a diversity of different subjects. And again, we want you to get involved if you possibly can. But back to today, Mr. Phillips, wonderful to have you here, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. And for those who are expecting to see David Weldon, apologies.
He's next week. Don't worry, that's new news. That's only been sorted out this morning. I'm going to make you, if I may, and add you to or replace the spotlight, and then together with Paddy, I'll let Paddy take control.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for the introduction. Paul, welcome to the BD Club. As Stephen said, we have a great session ahead of us where we'll get insights that will help you think about your marketing and new business approach for 2022, and also some client relationship stuff. The format for today is slightly different. Paul is actually going to give a 20-minute or so presentation before we open up to have a fully interactive session, where I'm sure actually there'll be lots of questions coming through. If you put them in the chat, we'll get you involved in the sort of session as well. Paul, it is great to have you here. I'm going to pass control to you so you can run through your presentation, and then we can move on to the questions. So over to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, let me do this. Can I have a thumbs up that I can see a full screen, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into it. In the next 60 minutes or so, I'll do a quick introduction to myself, and then talk about what we're hearing from the CMO world. And when I talk about CMOs, I'm talking about the marketing department, often their procurement colleagues. It's my collective for clients. I'm going to give you 3 predictions about what I see coming over the horizon. And then hopefully there will be time for some more questions. Please forgive me, I'm a bloke, so I can just about walk and chew gum at the same time. What I can't do is present and read the questions in the chat at the same time. So hopefully Patrick will keep an eye on those. I'll pause at points in the deck for any burning questions relating to what I'm talking about, but then similarly we'll have time at the end. So let's get into it. I spent my formative years working in full service advertising agencies. It started out in media departments and then into the media independent sector. And in about 3 weeks' time, I'll have served 24 years at AAR, which is another way of saying no one else will employ me. And in that time, I have been a consultant, definitely a confidant and counsellor to the CMO community and indeed to agencies. Have literally hundreds of CMO conversations, thousands of credentials and chemistry meetings. And I've been in the room, privileged to be in the room across media, creative, strategic. You can see for yourself all manner of pitches, both domestic and international. And what that offers is the luxury of perspective and insight, learning, and what, for those of you who I don't know and haven't met before, you will hopefully come to see as a reasonably strong point of view. And I am lucky enough, and I always end my introduction with this, I'm lucky enough to say that I think I've got the best job in the world. And anyone who can say that, I think is in a privileged position. So that's me. Stephen touched on AAR. I won't go any more into any more of what we do than what he touched on, other than to reiterate that we sit at the intersection of where brands and agencies meet, particularly in the circumstances of pitches. So let's kick off with what we're hearing from CMOs. And the first thing I want to talk about is why clients pitch, why do CMOs go to market? We have distilled all the reasons into 4 big buckets of reasons. The first is statutory or commercial governance. So government work, TfL work, public sector work, they have to go to market for statutory reasons. And they are public and open tenders to which anyone can raise their hand and express an interest. And it has nothing to do with the quality of service or work that is being delivered by their incumbent agencies. It was announced today or yesterday that the government has just, or is just about to, reappoint their media agency partner for managing the government buying, which is worth about 200 million in terms of billing old money. So they have to go to market regardless of the performance of their agencies. The next bucket is a new requirement. 1 or 2 of us old enough to remember when the internet came along, every single agency of whatever description was being asked for a website or a microsite, and then subsequently an app. There wasn't a pitch that I didn't attend for about 4 years where an app wasn't the answer. So a new need that exists now that didn't exist previously. So the current The recent version of that has been voice. Everyone is looking at people with expertise with voice, driven by Alexa. Other voice applications are available. And then the current battleground, if you like, and it's really in its very nascent days, is the metaverse. We're all hearing about the metaverse, either directly or in some cases through our children. And CEOs are asking CMOs, what's all this metaverse about? So that's coming down the tracks if it hasn't already arrived, in terms of you being asked by your clients, what's going on with the metaverse? How do we engage with it? Is it right for us? Can we use it commercially? And that's closely aligned and followed by NFTs. And we could spend a whole session on NFTs, but they're new requirements. So I need an agency with capabilities that has a new requirement. What I call new CMO syndrome. A new CMO comes on board and a very obvious statement of saying I've arrived is to call a review of one or several of their agency partners. And then the fourth territory is dissatisfaction. It's where incumbent agencies are not performing as required and as expected, which prompts a review. So those are the four buckets. To put them in some kind of scale and order, statutory, I'd say 10 or 15%, and the commercial governance aspect is increasing of private commercial operations that just, as part of their own due diligence, go to market. So 10 or 15%. New requirement, 10 or 15%. Again, new to the role, less so recently because there hasn't been as much movement in the last 18 months or so. So I'd say around 7 to 10%. And then dissatisfaction, I have to check my maths here, but certainly over 50%. So over 50% of pitches are for reasons of dissatisfaction. But you have a choice too. And this has been particularly highlighted since the pandemic and lockdown and different ways of working. So what are the lenses through which you look at opportunities, at new business opportunities? And I've just identified the main ones here, so I'll rattle through them. People, what are the people like? Client side, are they your kind of people? Are they the people that you want to work with? Money, what's the commercial opportunity? What's the size of the prize? Is it of a scale in which you are interested? The work, does the opportunity that is being asked of you allow you to do or invite you to do the work that you want to do as an agency? Is it going to stretch your people? Is it going to inspire your people? Capacity. This is a big one in the last 12 months, 18 months. Have you got the capacity to take on this new business opportunity alongside your existing client commitments and the other new business commitments that you already signed up for? Process. What is the process that is being undertaken? I'm a big fan of ensuring any pitch process, there is a balance between the size of the prize and what is being asked of agencies in order to win that prize. You should not have the same process for a prize worth £100,000 as you would for a prize that is worth £1 million in fees. So what's the process that is being asked of you? What's the corporate reputation of the opportunity, of the brand that is addressing you? So increasingly, agencies are looking at their partner clients to say, are you the kind of business that we want to be associated with, that we want to work with? You know, back in the day, it used to be tobacco, maybe petrochemicals, maybe brands that advertise to children as areas that were seen as, for some agencies, off limits. But today, how a business shows up, is it a good business, is something that is very much on the agenda, and something that agencies are having a point of view on in terms of the kind of partners that you're looking to work with. What's the reputation of the CMO, of the person, the individual? You know, do they Are they a loyal client, or do they move every 18 months, as in move their agencies? Or indeed, do they individually, do they move companies every, are they going to be around in 18 months' time? What are the reasons for pitching? Save me 20% is a very, very clear brief. It's not necessarily a brief that is attractive to everyone, but it's a very clear brief. But you need to understand what the reasons are for coming to market in order to determine if you are appropriate, if you have a fighting chance of addressing those reasons. And I think more than anything else, gut instinct counts for an awful lot. If it doesn't feel right for whatever reason, step away, walk away. I've had too many conversations with agency leaders over the years where they've said, you know what, we should never have gone for that. It just didn't feel right. And yet we convinced ourselves that we could do it and we had the resource and we could beat the other agencies, but in my heart of hearts, it just didn't feel right. So these don't have to be what your decision-making criteria are. Choose those that are most appropriate for you. But make sure that you have some decision-making criteria and that there's some kind of quantitative as well as qualitative mechanic for deciding where to place your bets and where to place your energies. All clear? Okay, we'll move on. So there are 4 themes that we've picked up from the pitches that we've undertaken, from the incumbent relationships that we are involved in on an ongoing basis between brands and their agencies, that I want to share with you. So the first is business, brand, marketing, comms. In that order: business, brand, marketing, comms. So I want you, my agency partners, to think about my business and how you can help my business grow. Sorry, that I should have preempted this with a caveat. Sorry, not a caveat. You know all this. Everything I'm about to share with you, you know all this. I'm just going to reinforce some of the high points of what we're hearing. So what skills do you have that don't exist within my organization that will enhance the ability to help grow my business? If 2020 was about businesses looking inwards, and for those that survived, 2021 saw brands for the first time look to pivot and transform their business with a welcome opportunity for their incumbent agencies to say, here are the other ways that we can help you. When I worked in an agency running business, my brief was to make sure that we retain the business first and foremost, and then to try and sell that business other services. And my clients would say, all you're trying to do, Paul, is sell us other services that we're not interested in, or we've got other agencies doing that service. I wasn't very good agency side. I was mediocre. But since the pandemic, what we have seen is the CMOs saying to their incumbent agencies, help us with our businesses, show us the other things that you could do for us that perhaps you weren't originally retained for, that will help us navigate our way through these times that we all face. So that was, and that remains, and that's a good thing. I would ask of you, I don't know how many amongst you work in the strategic consultancy space, but those of you that are, I would ask the others to ask you, what is it that you're hearing from your clients? Because there is a rhythm to how brands review their external agency arrangements. And often when they are looking at the business strategic aspect of their business and looking to their strategic consultancy partners, that has a trickle-down effect to brand, marketing, and comms and executional strategies. So if a brand is changing its strategic direction of travel, then the evidence would suggest that somewhere down the track, they will be looking at other aspects of their marketing and comms. So talk to your, either within Pimento or other strategic consultancies that you know and work with, talk to them and see what's happening in their world, because they're a good indicator of what's about to come down the track. And then the final point is, and again, this is a good thing, I think, the importance of the brand and the ascendancy of the CMO within their own organizations. Something that we're picking up is that CMOs are back in fashion within their own organizations and within their boardroom, and they are getting the ear of their CFO and their CEO. And I think in part this is driven by what's on the horizon of the cookieless world. How many times have we heard that? And the importance of first-party data. And it is within the CMO's remit that customer understanding and that customer journey understanding is where they are the experts. So the role of the CMO we are seeing and hearing is in the ascendancy and the confidence of CMOs within their own organization. Which leads me to the second point, customer-centric, data-informed, full-funnel marketing. Customer-centric, data-informed, full-funnel marketing. These are three elements of every single brief that we have worked on over the past 18 months. They might not use exactly that language, but I think everyone understands what is meant by that. Excuse me. So sometimes, often, they will look for a single element of the solution. Generally speaking, in domestic pitches, brands are looking to replace a chip plate in the dinner service rather than the whole dinner service. Slightly different on international opportunities. So they will look at a single element of that. It might be the upper funnel brand piece. It might be the performance conversion piece at the lower end of the funnel. But whether or not you're delivering some of this or all of this, I'd encourage you in your response to those briefs to think rugby, not golf. What on earth does he mean by that? Very simply, rugby is a team sport where the success requires on all members of the team to perform and to recognize that they are part of a bigger team. Golf, putting the Ryder Cup to one side, golf is an individual sport where you are essentially only reliant on yourself. And what CMOs are looking for are team players. So whatever aspect of the external part of the comms you are delivering, they want to know that you can respect and work with their internal teams and their external agency partners as well, because success has many parents and failure is an orphan. So think rugby, not golf. Next, experience is where the battle can be won. So what we see is that it's incredibly hard for agencies of whatever description, of brands of whatever description, to establish product or service differentiation and superiority. Who knew how many people needed vegetables in 10 minutes? Who knew that? But apparently we all need vegetables in 10 minutes, or nappies. And you know, the 10-minute delivery services, the food delivery services, the price comparison delivery services, behind the skin, they are far more similar than different. They are logistics organizations, or they, in the case of the price comparisons, you know, they are risk management organizations. It's the front of skin, it's the front of house where there is differentiation. So the experience, particularly of a digital brand, is where they are seeing the opportunity to win. And so the CMO, and indeed the whole company, is looking at the total customer experience, not just from their experience of comms, but their user experience. You know, this is the dominant tool and will remain so. And if you can map that customer journey and dovetail your thinking with the brand's chief technology officer as well as their chief marketing officer, your value is more likely to be recognized. And whilst I've said, whilst optimization is driven by, you know, rapid machine learning, you know, I'm hopefully closer to the end of my career than the start of my career. And if not, something has gone seriously wrong. So I'm less concerned. But for the generation coming up, and my kids' generation, you know, are the machines going to take over? Well, I hope not, and I think not, because whilst they can identify what color works, what they're less good at is explaining why it works. Hopefully you get my point. So Where agencies will win is being able to answer the why questions, not just the what questions. And that's why I think the next generation and the generation after that will continue to have jobs, and it won't be all machine learning. Number 4, of course, they want it all. No one said it was fair or easy. So I think that what I describe as strategic Jedi Knights are the rock stars of, certainly of pitches. And it's them what wins business more than anything else. It's not about getting the right answer. It's not about solving the business challenge. You're not expected to solve the business challenge in a pitch. The brief is to win the business. And I think the strategic Jedi Knights within agencies of whatever description are pitch winners. So amongst your own agencies and consultancies, who are your strategic Jedi Knights? Are they being used in business growth, business development, new business, organic growth in a way that will give you the best chance? We have this concept at AAR called creative capital. That's our description of it. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a new description, but we think what sets brands and indeed agencies apart is creativity in its broader sense. It's not just the painting and decorating. It's not just the coloring in, but creativity of thinking, creativity of execution, creativity of vision. And it is creative capital that will help differentiate brands and deliver brands growth, or else Amazon wins. And so if you can deliver creativity in all its forms to your current clients or your prospective clients, then you will be more attractive to them. They want you in the boardroom and they want you in the trenches as well. Your thinking, your delivery has to stretch across that spectrum. So often the first audience in a pitch is not the external customer, it's the internal staff or team. It might be the sales force, it might be the boardroom, quite often it's both. Because if you can't win them over, then what chance has the brand got of winning over its customers and its target audience? So you've got to be able to play at both ends of the spectrum. Specialists who are team players, we've touched on this already. You have to have subject matter expertise, but you've got to play nicely both with the client's internal team and resource and their other agency partners. I need you to do brilliantly what I can't do. If I can do it, what value add are you? And I need you to help me future-proof my decisions in order to pick you and to work with you, not just for the immediate requirements, task in hand, but for the longer term. And on top of all that, I want flexibility in the resource that I can access for you and the cost of service. The world that I grew up in of always on payment and more often than not commission payment, those days are long gone, is that they need and they want to be able to turn on and off the resource without losing those strategic Jedi Knights and all the thinking and experience that you built up. Without losing that, they want to be able to turn you on and off as they need you and pay for it accordingly. Like I said, no one said it was fair or easy. But those are 4 themes that we're hearing from CMOs. Right, I'm just going to stop sharing, pause for a moment, and see if there's any questions so far. No worries if not, because there's time at the end.
There's no questions at the moment, Paul.
Okay. Let's keep going. Moving on. 3 themes that we've learned or seen or observed from the last year, on the basis that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, there's nothing particularly new that any of us is going to learn, because if you're anything like me, I'm crawling towards Christmas. So 3 themes, and I've, as you can see, lumped them into agencies, CMOs, and then pitching. So first of all, agencies. Oh, I can't see the top of my slide. So agencies have become. Paddy, can you read the title out? I can't read it.
Agencies have become more self-aware and self-confident.
Thank you. It's the thank you. Agencies have become more self-aware and self-confident, and I think this is a great thing. So let me just delve into that and explain what I mean by that. First of all, you are putting people before profit. And what I mean by that is the pivot that we have all had to make, the environments, the mixed economy environments of working from home and working from the office. For some people, their office is their bedroom, is their relaxation area. And all the well-being of agency staff has come right up to the top of the agenda, front and center. And what we are seeing from agencies is that essentially they are turning down opportunities if they are not fit to take on those opportunities because their people are beasted, or they haven't got the resource, or there's too much going on, or they haven't had a break. They are stepping away from opportunities. And this is a good thing. This is a good thing. I think it is, I've not got the evidence, but intuition suggests that this is even more so the case in independent owner-managed businesses than it is in networked businesses. Like I say, that's intuition, that's gut rather than evidence. Next, if the brand team isn't properly prepared when going to market, agencies are walking away. So when I was talking about all those criteria that you might look at an opportunity for, if it's all a bit of a mess in terms of why they're coming to market, what the process is, who the engagement's going to be with, then agencies are saying, not interested. Not least because of that first point, and they're looking after their people. So brands are having to rock up in a new business situation, making sure that they know what they're doing. You know, we like to think when we're working with brands that that's part of the reason why we can help them, but you know, we're only one route to market. I touched on this again earlier. Agency staff will not work on opportunities if they don't have respect for that brand and how it shows up in the world. So, you know, child employment, low wages. If a brand's corporate reputation is not up to scratch, then individuals within agencies, not just the agency policy, individuals saying, I don't want to work on that business, they're not a good business. And I think this is all symptomatic of a subtle shift in the relationship between the brand community and the agency community. For a long time, it's been master-servant. And I think there's been a leveling up over the last year, 18 months or so, where, like I say, there's a self-confidence that we detect amongst agencies, and agencies are backing themselves more and simply looking after their people and their staff and the way they want to work, and turning away from opportunities that don't match your expectations. So those are some agency themes that we've picked up. Moving on to the client side, the brand side. CMOs are focusing on their marketing ecosystems. So what do we mean by this? So hopefully it's straightforward, but what we mean by marketing ecosystem, it's the sum of a brand's internal and external marketing talent. So in-housing, right-housing, in-sourcing, we're all familiar with the varying terms. But that blend of what they have internally and therefore what they need externally, where there's duplication, where there's gaps, where there's a change in skills required, they are paying increasing attention to that and taking ownership of that far more than ever before. And that's having an implication on incumbent agency relationships and on new opportunities. Some of the work that we do in other areas of our business, in what we call our design practice, is helping brands get that balance right, both internally and externally. And the result of that focus is that there's a greater openness to different ways of working, both with their current agency partners and indeed any new agency partners that they might have taken on board. And again, I touched on this earlier, so I'd be interested to hear from you, but they are more open to what else you can do for them beyond what you originally taken on to do for them. And as I said, creative capital is what we hear that's our expression for it, is what we hear time and again from CMOs as both what will accelerate their business growth and set them apart from their competition. So there is a belief and a buy-in that creativity will be the difference, and creativity is a business accelerant. And this has got to be great news for the agency and consultancy side of the business, because, you know, isn't that what we get out of bed for? So this is what we're hearing from the CMO community. And then third up, what's important in pitching has stayed more similar than different, if you like. So what wins pitches? People, people, people. It's people what wins pitches. Always, always. They are the biggest differentiator. And I'll repeat what I said earlier. You know all this. Strategic Jedi Knights. When in pitches, CMOs are looking for their consigliere, for their go-to person in whom they're going to place their confidence and their trust, because they are stretched too far across both their internal call on their time as well as their external call on their time. So who are the Strategic Jedi Knights within your organization? Identify them, use them carefully. What ambition do you show for their brand and their business and where you can take them? Ambition is a huge, it's hugely seductive and attractive. It's got to be ambition that can be realized, but show ambition for their brand and their business. I use this phrase, the ability to look around corners. And it's really linked to the ambition point earlier, which is, yes, they want you to address the immediate problem and challenge that they're facing, but they want you to show them the future that they can't see in order to help them navigate that future. So, you know, looking around corners. In a pitch, the editor, agency side, consultancy side, the editor is just as important as the author. Because the reality is you're very good at producing content for pitches, very, very good. And at the latter stages of a pitch, you should pay more attention to taking content out in order to address the next point, which is to be able to tell a good, convincing, coherent, articulate, persuasive story. Storytelling told by people is what wins pitches. No client ever walked out of a pitch presentation, or probably indeed any meeting, and said there weren't enough slides in that deck, ever. So use your editors in the final stages of a pitch. And then finally, something good and positive that's come out of everything that we've been through is what I call humanity. So we have all been in these meetings where in the background or sometimes in the foreground, the dog, the children, the partner are in camera. And isn't it wonderful? Or the doorbell goes because it's a delivery, or whatever it happens to be. And I just think that that degree of humanity and forgiveness of everything that we are navigating is here to stay. And something that, you know, when we all did meetings in boardrooms and meeting rooms constantly, that humanity was left at the boardroom door on occasion, and we were all very stiff and grown up and formal. So yeah, I can't remember the last time I wore a suit. So those are the things that are important in pitches, and I think are here to stay. Right, we're near the end. So 3 predictions for 2022 and beyond, with some watch outs to think about. And what I've not done here is I've not said, oh, I think the market's going to increase by 14%, anything like that. There are others far better placed than me to do that. But what I do, first of all, want to draw your attention to is there's a chap called Richard Tobaccowaller who used to work at Publicis Group a while ago. He now works for himself. I think he's the brightest man I've ever met. Rob Norman, my old boss, thought he was the brightest man I'd ever met. But I think Richard is the brightest man I've ever met. And like I said, I'll share the deck afterwards. He did 10 forecasts in 2020 for the Times of India. And I think he got them all right. And he's just done 10 forecasts now, looking ahead. And these are macro forecasts. Have a look. It's really interesting. And like I say, he's far smarter than I am. And then the other thing I just wanted to share with you is something that Mark Ritson wrote recently in his acerbic style. And I'll read this out because I like this. What he wrote was, the only thing that's going to really change dramatically after coronavirus is the number of columns from hacks predicting that everything is going to change. Most marketing writers, it says here arseholes. I think the word was, it says here arsehats, I think the word was arseholes. Excuse me if I've offended anyone. They love drama. They are addicted to the pornography of change. They adore making specious, rambling predictions about the future because, as the ad contrarian blogger Bob Hoffman dryly but brilliantly observed, if you're a marketing genius with a terrible track record, the future is a great place to hide. I love that. If you're a marketing genius with a terrible track record, the future is a great place to hide. So I am going to hide in the future now, and with certainty that I'm not going to be invited back this time next year where you're able to say your predictions were rubbish. Here are 3 predictions for next year. Number 1, as long as pitching remains the legal high so enamored by agencies, the industrial scale arms race that is new business will continue with little, if anything, to abate it. We are drawn to pitching in a slightly unhealthy fashion. And my observation about this is that more than anything else, this devalues what we do in the eyes of our customers. Because by and large, not everyone, but by and large, the way it works is that we pitch our ideas, we do all the work, we rarely get financially recompensed for it, even beer and pizza money. And then we cross our fingers that the client will pick us rather than someone else in order to be able to execute our ideas. We give it away. And it's a drug that in 24 years, never mind the last 12 months, it's a drug that in 24 years of doing this, I see no evidence of agencies generally trying to wean themselves off of. So I think that arms race will continue. That's prediction number 1. Number 2, creativity is all that sets us apart. And those of you who can leverage this to drive your client's business will become their long-term trusted advisors. This is the 3rd time I've said this in this deck. Creativity is what sets us apart. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Like I say, read Richard if you want really intelligent stuff. But the point about this is that the challenge is to extract a value from this creativity that breaks free from the meaningless shackles of time-based remuneration. How ridiculous is it that we are remunerated and encouraged to go slower? It's ridiculous. So for those of you that have been able to do that, good on you, well done. For those of you that enjoy a value remuneration that recognizes the contribution you make to your client's business, please tell me the secret. But the vast majority of the supply side, to put it in those terms, still gets remunerated on hours and overhead and margin. And I think if we are as smart as we think we are, we should try and address that. And then prediction number 3, balancing the future needs of individuals with those of the agencies will ask more challenging questions of us than ever before. So the future needs of the individual being balanced with those of the agency will ask more challenging questions of us than ever before. I think our industry, compared to others that I have read about and heard from, has been a little bit complacent and slow to react to the world around us. And that's resulted in a talent shortage, a lack of appeal about the industry, and is threatening the very creativity that sets our industry apart and from which our clients come to us. So talent shortage, it was something that Stephen mentioned in the setup. I haven't got the answer to it, but talent shortage and talent appeal is a very real issue that we have to deal with. I read today, just before this, Publicis Group have said next year, if you're an employee of Publicis Group, you can work for 6 weeks in any country of the world where there's a Publicis office. You don't have to be work in your home, wherever home is. And they're doing that in part to retain their talent. So those are three predictions. All remaining questions answered. Oh, there's some questions in the chat. Thank God for that. So let me take the stop sharing down. I've got a big picture of myself. How do I remove that?
Let me do that for you.
Yeah, please do, because I know what I look like. It's not pretty.
Paul, thank you very much for that. I'm going to actually bring Jeremy straight into this. The questions he's asked are quite sort of relevant to sort of the first question I was going to ask, which is about sort of the role of independent agencies and why they're doing so well. So Jeremy, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have done. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a question really about, are you sensing from your conversations with clients that any frustration with the legacy structural models that traditional agencies employ, high overhead contributions, big charge out rates, long team lists, dubious individual contributions, given that we're all been working through Zoom and from our kitchens, you haven't got the trappings of the building, the agency, the set piece meeting, it's about what you're delivering. Have you heard frustrations from clients that they don't see what they're getting for the huge fees they're paying to agencies?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, you may be surprised to hear that your description of big overheads and so on and so forth is not how those agencies sell themselves. Funny that. Let me tell you what we're hearing. Independent agencies of whatever persuasion are very good at talking about independence and selling the benefits of independence. And you are to be applauded for that. You know, we're in a competitive environment where the heritage agencies have been less adept is to be able to sell the benefits of what a heritage agency with all the capability and resource that they have. They've been less adept at selling those as an advantage to prospective opportunities. What we're not hearing from clients is, I only want an independent agency. What we are hearing is, I can see, for the reasons that you've just said, Jeremy, that I don't need an office in every marketplace. I want, as I mentioned before, I want to be able to turn the resource on and off. And I get a sense that the independent community are more agile in being able to service that requirement than the heritage agencies. When it comes to it, what they really want are the best people with the best thinking that can deliver the best results for their business. And at the point of certainly those agencies that have been invited to pitch, at that point, they are open to any agency on that pitch list, regardless of ownership, winning their business, because it's about the best for them. It's not about the best independent or the best network. What has changed is that the independent sector has access to opportunities that it formerly didn't have. And, you know, IAG is the best, most recent example of that, where you have Uncommon winning a piece of business that in a world that I grew up in was, you know, just couldn't be countenanced. So I think the headwinds are with you. You are very good at leveraging the value and the contribution of independence, particularly when the networks are less eloquent in promoting the benefits of their approach. But ultimately, you need to have the right people, the right thinking, the right delivery at the right cost, so on and so forth. And the independence becomes a nice to have as well on top rather than a must have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Paul. And just actually sort of moving this on, so the retainer model, is that sort of moving away from being sort of, I think this also falls into the benefit of the independence, which is actually the clients moving much more to project-based relationships, and even zero-based sort of marketing and zero-based budgeting. That sort of fails and falls badly on the networks, which have the strong legacies and look for the relationships to be longer term and retainer based. Do you think that's also adding opportunity into independence?
I think the independent marketplace, again, is more flexible, not least because when I entered the business, if you were freelance, that was shorthand for can't get a job. Yes, Stephen recognises that. Or if you went international, couldn't cut it. You know, how ridiculous are both of those things? But today, you dial your freelance resource up and down according to workload, and therefore you don't have those fixed overheads. So the independent model and the openness to freelance, and many of you are digital natives, not digital immigrants. That whole openness to a different way of working makes it more attractive. It's more natural. It's not a learned way of working. It's a natural way of working. The remuneration side of things, broadly speaking, most brands want a level of resource that they can call on, that they can turn to, that is building up knowledge about their business, such that they're not starting with their agency partner from scratch every time they pick up the phone. So a level of resource, and obviously that varies according to circumstance. And then when there is activation, when there are new launches, when there's new stuff, a pivot, then they want more resource for which they're prepared to pay for. You mentioned zero-based budgeting. It's funny because that was, I can't remember the last time I heard that phrase, and yet pre-pandemic, everyone was doing zero-based budgeting, and we're all based on, we're all operating like that. Maybe it's still around, it's just not being spoken about as much. But I get the sense that there's less, two things, there's less ask for it, and going back to the confidence that agencies have in and of themselves. If you are presented with a zero-based budgeting opportunity, how attractive is that to you? And therefore, how much effort you're going to put in pursuing that?
Brilliant. And a slightly different question is around sort of diversity, inclusion, sustainability. Now, it's big on client agendas. How much is that influencing also the decision-making in terms of agencies they direct, especially if they're seeing a sort of bunch of white, middle-class, middle-aged men?
Yes, I find on numerous occasions I have to apologise for who I am and what I look like. So that's usually when I go home. Yes, I mean, for all the reasons that we understand and recognise, all of which are good reasons, together with equal pay, and these are no longer lip service, and haven't for some time been lip service issues. Again, 150 years ago, you might get asked for what your company's CSR policy was, and you'd put a tome down on the table, which would never get read, but that's the policy if you want it. Today, it's much more meaningful now. And, I've had comment where we have turned up to meetings which are inappropriately presented in terms of the profile of the agency team. It's been called out. So agencies are much more aware of it. Is it the reason why an agency is appointed or not? No, it's not. But it can contribute significantly to whether or not an agency gets invited to pitch, and how much in the early stages. So in the early stages of a review, CMOs are looking for reasons to exclude far more than they're looking for reasons to include, because it's whatever area of the market you're in, it's a very well supplied market. And if you look wrong, then that's a good reason to exclude. So it might not, sometimes it is in the brief, but it might not be written in the brief, but it's certainly on their agenda and on their earlier decision making.
Brilliant, thank you. And so bring that in, actually, you talked and mentioned pitching and stuff like that. There's a question from Adam. I don't think Adam's actually on the call anymore, but it was around sort of pitch processing can be actually quite on an unlevel playing field, and actually should clients pay agencies to pitch, especially if they're using their ideas at the end of it?
There's 3 points you've raised there. Pitches can be unlevel, not an AAR pitch, just saying. So if you think a pitch opportunity is not going to give you a fair chance, and I appreciate you don't always know that first up, but walk away, listen to your gut. Should agencies be paid for pitches? So was the second point. So whenever we do a pitch, we always say to the client team, are you prepared to put your hand in your pocket? Not to cover the whole cost of the pitches. You know, I think I mentioned it earlier, we talk about beer and pizza money. Beer and pizza money. This is about saying to the agency team that's pitching for the business, we appreciate that you've worked weekends, that you've missed the school trip, or that you've had to cut short a holiday, whatever it happens to be, and we just want to say thank you for that. And those brands that say we're going to pay £5,000, whatever, to the losing agencies, they get elevated to superstardom status very, very quickly. And from your point of view, you're going to put out for those opportunities because that's the kind of people that you want to work with. One quick example, we did a pitch for Farfetch, the fashion platform, earlier this year. For all the agencies with which they had chemistry meetings, not the pitching agencies, the 6 or 7 agencies, I can't remember, we had chemistry meetings with, they said to each agency, have £1,000, go and experience the platform, go and spend some money, see what it's like as a customer. And so for agencies that didn't even get invited to pitch, they gave them £1,000 to spend on the platform. Fantastic. Who wouldn't want to work with a client that does that? And then the third aspect was the ideas that you mentioned. So, and this is an industry-wide issue. So some agencies are very clear and have in their own NDAs, we own the idea until such point as you appoint us, and then you pay us, and that gives you ownership of the idea. I know the IPA is big on this in the comm space, and there've been stories over the years. I remember years and years ago, Guinness did a dance. There was an ad that they stuck on that was done by some students apparently, and they were a placement at the agency, and that's a long time ago. Or you get one agency delivering what apparently is another agency's idea. Bad briefs, narrow briefs, result in all agencies getting to the same answer, and therefore it's not surprising that one agency is going to come up with something similar to another agency. Good briefs allow agencies to go in different directions. We do good briefs. So it's a difficult one, but at least in your own T's and C's, your NDAs, be clear that you have ownership of the idea up until the point that you're appointed to get paid for it. And we've all come across brands that say we own the ideas at chemistry stage, at tissue stage, at work in progress stage. On that basis, walk away.
Brilliant, Paul.
It's easy for me to say it, I appreciate.
Last question, because we actually run out of time, but in terms of smaller independent agencies, what would you recommend how they engage with you as an AAR and sort of that agency?
If you haven't already, just get in touch with us. There's a link on our website, or I'll give you my email details afterwards. Get in touch with us, and if we don't know you, the first thing is let's have a chat and get to know you.
Brilliant. Paul, it's 12 o'clock, so the hour is up. Thank you so much for joining us. That was a really enlightening session. I thought there was lots of key takeaways from that, which will be really beneficial to sort of members of Pimento and agencies in general.